Meanwhile, China is working on a new project. Xi Jinping wants to be the man of peace. And no, this is not a change of heart. He just wants to score political points. And this is not peace for his neighbors. Xi Jinping wants to mediate in the Russia-Ukraine war. He's making a push for talks. China has gone into a diplomatic overdrive. Their president wants to speak to the leaders of Ukraine and Russia. Xi Jinping plans to speak to Zelensky virtually, and then he'll meet Vladimir Putin in person. And this dialogue could happen as soon as next week. Reports say the Chinese president will first travel to Moscow. There he will meet the Russian president, and after that he will call the Ukrainian president. This would be a first. Xi Jinping has not spoken to Volodymyr Zelensky since the war began last year. With the Russians, though, he's been in regular touch. So if the call with Zelensky happens, it will be significant. China will position itself as a mediator in the war. The question is why? What explains Xi Jinping's urgency? Perhaps the events in West Asia. Remember, he took credit for the truce between Saudi Arabia and Iran. China hosted the final round of peace talks. Even though other intermediaries were involved, China took all the credit. Beijing declared that it was the one that brokered the peace pact. Perhaps they want a repeat in Ukraine, and China stands to gain a lot with this. The idea is to present a new world order, one that is led by China instead of the West. At least that's the ambition. China is already pitching itself as the good guy and painting the West as the driver of the conflict.
Regrettably, efforts to persuade peace and promote talks have been consistently undermined. It seems there's an invisible hand pushing for the protraction and escalation of the conflict, using the Ukrainian crisis to serve certain geopolitical agendas.
The invisible hand, says the Chinese foreign minister. No prizes for guessing who he's talking about. The United States of America. China is suggesting that it can do a better job. And that's the first reason why it wants to mediate. Reason number two, China wants to seek leverage against the US. Remember, the US has been trying to contain China by slapping sanctions. It has been trying to move the global supply chains away from China. Beijing wants to stop this. It wants to stop the exodus of businesses, and ending the Ukraine war would give China an opening. An opportunity, basically, to stitch new alliances, to reboot ties with Europe, for instance. In fact, reports say when the Chinese president travels to Russia, he may make a few stops in Europe too. It will be quite something. A diplomatic comeback of sorts. After 3 years in a virtual lockdown, the Chinese president will be touring multiple countries. The plans are yet to be finalized, and the United States is watching closely. Washington is sending a message to the Chinese president about this upcoming visit to Moscow. Listen to what's being said. We have been encouraging President Xi, this is the US saying, we have been encouraging President Xi to reach out to President Zelensky because we believe the PRC and President Xi himself should hear directly the Ukrainian perspective and not just the Russian perspective on this. Earlier this year, China pushed a so-called peace plan for Ukraine, and Kiev was not even consulted about it, which is why the West has been skeptical about China's moves. But to say they're the ones encouraging China is a bit much. And the West may not agree to Xi Jinping's peace plan. It's very unlikely to fly. Then why would Xi Jinping still want to get involved in this? Because even an attempt to intervene could bring him good press, both at home and outside. You see, China's domestic troubles are mounting, and the Chinese have started blaming the West for it. The government has. This is all an attempt to build a new narrative. Look at Xi Jinping's recent speech. He uses words like containment, encirclement, suppression. All of it is to paint China as a victim and America as the perpetrator. And now this rivalry could play out in the battleground of Ukraine. Let's hope it doesn't make things worse.